Yesterday we learned about into the concept we learned about what are the challenges in modern web development. What are the challenges in modern web development? We discussed about few challenges like fluid unified user experience, fluid user experience, and loosely coupled and extensible architecture, and simplified upgrade and deployment. So these are the major challenges in modern web development. So I hope you understood this. Can you tell me what is unified user experience? Remembered what we discussed yesterday? What is unified user experience? Remembered yesterday's few points we discussed? What is unified experience? Yeah, good, right? Yes, application must give the same experience across devices. Am I right? Unified experience means across any device, any operating system services, any device, application should work same, right? Application should be same feel, same functionality, right? A unified experience across any device, right? Yeah. So what is a fluid experience? What is fluid experience? Fluid experience means yesterday given one point. That means user will stay on only one page and get access to everything onto that page. Am I right? Yeah, user will stay on only one page and everything comes onto that page. Loosely coupled extensible means it allows to simply push in the new updates, so new contents, without reinstalling the entire application. So the new features will not cause any problems in your existing application. Simplified upgrades and deployments, that means single step installation. So we don't need to restart our machine after installing the application. Just install and open. All these are generally the challenges in modern web development. So yesterday I given a complete overview on this. Then the second option is, these are all the challenges in modern web development. So what is solution? What is solution for this? How you can handle all these? For that also we discussed. So better build single page and progressive web applications. So instead of going with traditional web applications, better build single page and progressive web applications. So single page and progressive web applications are not new actually. Single page and progressive applications are there from several years. But now they are very much trending. Now developers are concentrating on much on single page and progressive. If you know Twitter. Twitter is a single page application, and Twitter is there from several years. Before you know about Angular.js, Angular, Twitter is there. Twitter is a single page application. That means we designed single page applications. We were using single page applications. Now it is trending. That is only the point. So developer is not new for single page applications. We know single page applications, but now we are concentrating much on them, right? In early days, the best single page applications and APIs, world's first API, eBay. You heard about eBay is a shopping site. So eBay is the first API that came onto devices like mobiles actually. After that, so many. And single page applications, progressive web applications, we have them, but now we are using them more. We are developing more single page because everyone comes with the same requirement. So these days, everyone wants his application to be on mobile, smart devices. Then this becomes very popular now, right? But this is not new for development. Already we know single page applications. Now question here is how to build single page applications and progressive web applications. This is another important question. Now the question is, can we use JavaScript and JQuery for building single page applications? Actually, JavaScript, JQuery, you can use for building single page applications. Yes. And you need, along with some more, that means, yes, you need cross-platform frameworks, frameworks like you need cross-platform frameworks additionally, like Apache Cordova, like native script, like Ionic, etc. Only JavaScript and jQuery cannot do everything actually. So I want to build a cross-platform mobile application. Then JavaScript, jQuery only cannot handle. So you can build a single page application with JavaScript, jQuery, but you need additional support of some frameworks like Cordova, native script, Ionic and all. Actually, so we have Cordova. This is Apache Cordova. And you can see you can build mobile applications with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can build mobile applications with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That means it targets multiple platforms with one code base. This is Cordova. You have frameworks like native script also. This is native script. You can create native iOS and Android applications with JavaScript. You can build. We have a Ionic framework. So this is Ionic. Framework. So this is Ionic. So this is one code base for any platform. You can build cross-platform mobile native applications. So you may be hearing all these for the first time, but people who are involved in lot of mobile applications and mobile development and web together, they need all these frameworks actually. Several frameworks are there. They need all these frameworks. So this is not new for developers who are involved with JavaScript, jQuery like things. So can you build single page applications and progressive web applications, cross-platform mobile applications with the JavaScript and jQuery? Yes, we can do that. So you can do, you need to implement some additional frameworks like Cordova, like NativeScript, like Ionic and all. But what is problem with the JavaScript and jQuery? What is problem with JavaScript and jQuery? So why we cannot continue with JavaScript and jQuery only? So because along with those frameworks also we can build, right? So what is problem with JavaScript and jQuery? So cross-platform is you can run on any operating system, right? Any device, any operating system. So what is problem with JavaScript and jQuery? So why we have to go with some new things actually? So many problems are there with JavaScript and jQuery. So what are the problems with JavaScript and jQuery? First point, JavaScript and jQuery are coupled with the DOM, means document object model. I think majority of you people know about DOM, document object model. So am I right? Majority of you know about DOM, document object model. What is DOM? Because if you have learned HTML and JavaScript, I think you generally know about DOM. Document object model, DOM, it is a hierarchy of elements. HTML presents elements in a hierarchical order, and that is called as DOM, document object model. HTML presents DOM, and JavaScript, jQuery manipulates the DOM. They make the DOM dynamic. Actually, so if you have learned HTML and JavaScript, everything that is very common, you know that HTML presents the DOM and the JavaScript, jQuery manipulates the DOM. JavaScript, jQuery completely deal with the DOM manipulation. Actually, this is the DOM. This is the DOM. So how HTML presents everything? HTML presents everything. So we have a window, document, anything, right? You know this hierarchy. I think you came from the background of minimum HTML and JavaScript. So it's a minimum basic concept that you know about the DOM hierarchy. All the manipulations are related to the DOM hierarchy. Manipulations are related to the DOM hierarchy, right? Related to DOM hierarchy. So JavaScript, jQuery are coupled with the DOM, and lot of DOM manipulations. That means if I want to access any element in HTML page, then JavaScript have jQuery. JavaScript uses get element by ID, get element by name, get element by tag name. jQuery uses references of IDs, classes. So without DOM manipulations, they cannot work So they completely deal with DOM manipulations. So lot of references and coding. So lot of references you need, lot of coding is required. Data binding issues are there. Data binding issues will be there. How to access the data from one location and how to show in another location. How we can collect the data, modified and update back to the source. For that, we need a lot of implementation. It's not simply to that we can handle data binding. Accessing the data, binding the data to the view, from the view collecting it and again binding back to the source. This requires a lot of manipulations, implementations. And very important is we have navigation issues. JavaScript, JQuery have access to history object. I think you know JavaScript have a location object, history object, navigator object. Several built-in objects are there. Navigation issue is nothing but one of the main problem is you are building a single page application. And even you are building a single page application, in single page application intention is user will stay on one page and get access to everything on that page. There should not be anything like back, forward, like options. Everything comes onto one page. But JavaScript jQuery have a history object which can give access to back. That means we have a problem that what happens if user clicks the back button. Even today you can see several bank applications, several online transactions. Whenever you are transferring money or doing some transaction online, so they always keep you alerted. So they keep messaging you, right? Don't refresh, don't push back button, because if you push back button, it will be cancelled. But in a single page application, so there should not be option to go back at all. So it should, even user pushes the back button on his mobile, it goes in the background and does the process in the background. It should not go to back page. But still we have several applications having these type of issues. Like what happens when user clicks the back button. So this is all general issues that we have to face with the JavaScript and jQuery. So that means another important point is JavaScript is a language, and jQuery is a library, JavaScript is a language and jQuery is a library. jQuery is a JavaScript library. A language and a library cannot control the application flow. A language and library can build your application, but they cannot control the application flow. So JavaScript jQuery depends on a lot of browser events. They depend on a lot of browser events. Events have to take control of your language, and they need to control the language or library. That is one of the major issue with JavaScript and jQuery. So one problem with JavaScript and jQuery, I will just give you a basic point here. What is problem in JavaScript and jQuery? Let's see what is the problem in JavaScript and jQuery. Suppose we are building an application. So we have a web application, and we are building a web application with a language, so or jQuery. So jQuery is a library. So jQuery is a library. So JavaScript is language and jQuery is library. Now we build an application, a web application, and where we used the jQuery library. Now what happens, how this actually works is, first when user requests, that means the first point is the page loads into browser. So page loads into browser. That means when page is requested by the client, the page loads into browser. So first step, the page will load into browser. The page loads into browser. After loading the page into browser, the next step what happens is page loads static DOM into browser. It loads the static DOM into browser. That means it will load the DOM content, because HTML presents DOM. It loads the DOM into browser. You can see with any page. So for example, suppose we are having a HTML page. Suppose I have some HTML page, some home HTML, some sample HTML, some HTML pages are there. Suppose I'm opening an HTML page. So this is a HTML page, a general simple HTML page. This is HTML page. And what happens is I press F12, debugger will come. This is the debugger. In the debugger, I will go to the network category. And in the network category, so I am recording the network activity. And I refresh here, the request came to the home. And you can see that it says that DOM content loaded. That means at the bottom, you can see that it has finished loading the DOM content. And DOM content loaded, and it took 34 milliseconds to load this DOM content. That means these are all the elements loaded. And you can see, so it in the network, it says that it took 34 milliseconds to load your DOM content. Load the DOM content. This is a common thing in general HTML. HTML presents elements in a hierarchical order. That hierarchy is known as DOM. First, when you request the HTML page, it loads the DOM. So DOM content loaded is an event. On that event, it loads the DOM elements. But these DOM elements are static. They are static DOM elements. They are not dynamic. That means they just loaded, but they are not ready. So that means DOM content is loaded. Okay. Next step, after loading the DOM into browser, the next step is page loads the library into browser. So after loading the DOM content, it loads the library into browser. That means you have used a library for this page, and the library is loaded into browser. We are using JQuery library. That library is loaded into browser. Okay. After loading the library into browser, one of the issue with the library is, so library is passive. That means it is not active. So the library is loaded into browser, but the library is passive. It is not active. So library is not active. That means library is loaded, but not working. Library will load, but it will not work. And to make the library, if library is not active, that means application is not responding. If library is not active, that means application is not responding. That means application is not yet handling our interactions. Then generally what happens is, so browser uses events to make the library active, to make the library active. Browser uses events to make the library active. So browser uses events to make the library active. That means you know that we have events like body load, on unload, like on click, on change. These are all like events. Browser uses events to make the library active. So once library is active, now the static DOM is converted into dynamic DOM. Now the static DOM acts as dynamic DOM. Acts as a dynamic DOM. That means now it starts responding to your interactions. That means library is used for building your application, but library cannot control the application flow. So you built application, but it cannot control the application flow. This is what actually happens. That means as a developer, generally we know that. So if we are using a language and a library to build application, so this is not enough to control the application flow. Now, if you go with this problem to any developer that this is the issue, what should I do? Then the first suggestion given by the developer, is, so better use a framework. So that means now what is the solution for this? So better use a framework. What is actually framework? It's a very big concept. We will discuss in our Angular about frameworks. Here I will just give an overview point. Suppose you learned Java, you learned .NET, and you learned PHP, Python like technologies. When you go to interview, so after learning this as a developer, you attend any interview. The first question they ask, like, okay, what frameworks you learned in Java? What frameworks you learned in .NET? What frameworks you know in PHP? You know that Java people learn framework like Spring, Hibernate. PHP people will learn frameworks like Cake PHP, Code Igniter. Python people learn frameworks like Django, Flask. And .NET people learn frameworks like ASP.NET MVC. That means a framework is required. A framework provides a library. Through the library, you can build the application, and framework have the ability to control the application flow. Framework has two abilities. It provides a library to build the application, and it can control the application flow. So that is the process. That is actually the concept of framework. So better use a framework. That means now in the next here, suppose we have a web application. And this time for the web application, so we are using a framework. We have a lot of frameworks. So suppose we are using a framework. Now, what is the ability? What is the specialty of the framework? What is the specialty of the framework? First, up to this, everything is common. That means the page loads into browser, page loads the static DOM into browser. So page loads into browser, page loads the static DOM into browser. After that, page loads the framework into browser. Page loads the framework into browser. Page loads framework into browser. Page loads framework into browser. Once the framework is loaded into browser, that means now the framework takes control. Page loads the framework into browser, and one of the advantages is framework is active. Framework is active. Framework is active. That means it takes control over application. Framework is active. It takes control over application. It takes control over application. Once it takes control over the application, so it converts the static DOM into dynamic DOM. That means now the static DOM is converted into the dynamic DOM. Converted into dynamic DOM. That means framework has the ability to build the application and to control the application flow. I will just give you one simple example flow. So what I am doing here is not important. I'm just observe the concept. So I'm just showing you a simple flow. Right? So you don't need to worry about what exactly happening inside my coding, right? Logic. Suppose I will just give you a basic point here. See, I'm creating a page. Suppose JQuery library .html. Okay, so a page. We created a page JQuery library.html. Here I'm designing a page. Let's keep that. Okay. And head section. I'm using the JQuery library. Script source. So I have that JQuery library. So JQuery dist jQuery.js. So this is jQuery library. And here in the body section, I have a simple name. It is a text box. Input type is equal to text. And I have a simple span message hello and some span. So here this is some span. Okay. Now what I need to do is here. So I need to collect the value from this text box and I need to display that inside the span. That is the point. I need to get the data from text box and display inside the span. And I'm using jQuery. If I'm using JavaScript, you know, get element by ID, get element by name, a lot of things are there. Here you can see now jQuery is a library. Okay, let's run this and see now. So when I run this page, and here I'm typing something, so you can see that it is not working. It will never work, right? Because you need to tell from where to bring the data, where to attach that. So you have to make the library active. I think if you know jQuery, you know, we need to make the library active first. So because library is already loaded, you can see F12. You can see that when I make a request, You can see library, this file and JQuery library, both are loaded. jQuery.js library is loaded. Library is loaded, but it is not active. To make the library active, I need to use $. So I need to define a function and I need to make the library active. This makes the jQuery library active. Okay, after the jQuery library active, when user is typing something inside the text box, I need to update. So here I'm just using a reference as so span.html. Into the span, I need to display the value coming from text box. So for example, so this is having an ID as txt name, and this is having an ID as msg. Then usually we have to use the hash msg, that is the span ID. In the span, we need to display hash txt name dot value, get the value and display. That means library is active. Okay, fine. After the library is active, I am collecting the data from the text box and I am updating into this span here. Okay, save this and refresh here. And you can see that when I am typing something here, so I am typing something here, it is still not working. Why? Because, so that means the library is loaded. Browser uses events to make the library active also. That means now we need some events to handle this issue. Event means now when it should update the data, I need to tell that also. So library is ready, but still this functionality is not ready. Why? Because you have to tell when to update. That means I think you know that you have to tell this on an event. That means txt name on key up. That means on key up. That means key up. Key up. Key up is a function. So when you key up on the text box, this should happen. You need events. You need events to identify whether change happened or not. You need events to identify whether update happened or not, right? That means now you can see that once we do this, now I refresh and now it is working fine. Now it is working fine. This is what happens in the case of a library. In the case of a library, this is a library. This is library. Now let's try the same with a framework. Let's try the same with a framework. So this is library. This is library. Let's try the same with a framework. So now I will remove this all from here. Okay. I'm removing this all from here. That's done. And I don't have any IDs and references also here. That's fine. Now you can see when I refresh this, so let's open that. And when I refresh this, and you can see it's not working. Fine. Now I will put a framework into this. I have a framework. So as the framework is Angular framework, Angular JS is a framework. I have a framework. And after the framework takes control of this body section. And framework uses some architectural patterns. Suppose AngularJS is using an architectural pattern called MVC, Model View Controller. This is model where you keep the data. So the text box data is stored in uname, and this is the location where we bind the data. That means we need to bind the data here. I am not writing any events. We are not configuring any events here. We are not using any DOM references. It is completely decoupled from the DOM manipulations. And you can see now, I refresh this page and you can see now, you can see it is working. That's great. That's good. That means now you are watching at the framework. Now you can observe the difference. So you can observe the difference. The framework is completely decoupled from DOM manipulations. It is completely decoupled from the DOM manipulations. So it directly takes control over your application. It doesn't require much events. I'm not saying that it doesn't require events at all. It doesn't require events to make your static to dynamic. So this is the ability of a framework. Then what is the solution? That means these are all the problems with JavaScript and jQuery. Then what is solution? What is solution? Solution is now better. Solution is better. Better use a framework. Use a framework client side. Better use a framework client side. You can use a framework client side. There are so many frameworks client side introduced. In early days, we don't have client side frameworks. In early days, we don't have much client side frameworks. After that, so many frameworks came into existence. So we don't have a proper framework. That's the reason for several years, we stick to just JavaScript and jQuery only. Even today, several applications still work on JavaScript and jQuery only. So better use a framework client side. So many frameworks came into market, like Knockout.js, like Backbone.js, like Backbone.js, like Ember.js, like Vue.js, so like Angular.js, all these. Several frameworks came into existence. So Knockout, Backbone, Ember. Even today, you will find jobs in Knockout.js. So even today, you will find jobs for Backbone.js or Ember.js. Some companies still use them. So then why people? So that means now by this point you understood. So the concept, what is Angular.js? Now can you tell me what is Angular.js? I hope you got a clarity. Technically, what is Angular.js? If I ask what is Angular.js, then what will be your answer? So Angular.js is a framework, good, right? So technically, AngularJS is a framework. So what is AngularJS? AngularJS is a framework, and it is open source. It is open source and cross-platform. It is open source and cross-platform. Actually, AngularJS developed by Google, and AngularJS is maintained by large community of organizations and individuals. So several frameworks came, but we cannot say that this is good, this is bad. Several technical issues are there. That is only the point. That means a software developer will never say this is good, this is bad. He will just say that this is not compatible for this is compatible. So that means it's not like this is great, this is not great. It is like, is it suitable for our requirements or not? That is important. That means that's the reason. So it's not mandatory that everyone have to use only AngularJS. So there are several applications asking for Backbone, Knockout, so many are there. So why AngularJS become a little bit more popular than others? Because of its features and because of the background who provided it. AngularJS came from the Google, right? So you know the abilities of Google. That means, so several applications built by Google are designed by using AngularJS. Even today, several thousands of applications are running on AngularJS. So, and important point here is, I will not go into history of AngularJS and all, right? Actual point is, AngularJS was introduced to world in 2010. It was introduced in 2010. So people started using AngularJS because of its good abilities, and one of the main ability is it uses so Apache Cordova in the background to make the applications cross-platform. So it is built on Apache Cordova. That's great. That means cross-platform mobile applications. Another important is it uses architectural frameworks like MVC, MVVM frameworks. So people who are working with server-side MVC, MVVM like frameworks, that means Java MVC, .NET MVC, and PHP MVC, for them AngularJS complements best. So for the client-side MVC and MVVM frameworks. So, and actually other frameworks have a problem in data binding, and AngularJS have two-way data binding techniques. So many advantages are there when compared to other frameworks. That's the reason people migrated to this AngularJS. So, and this is good for building. That means Google developed, and it is now maintained by a large community of organizations and individuals to address the issues in single page applications. The issues of single page applications. That means for single page applications, now AngularJS is good. So that is one of the important point about AngularJS. So AngularJS is a framework. It's an open source cross-platform framework. And one important problem with AngularJS. What is problem with AngularJS? So what are the issues with AngularJS? So that we need to understand actually. What are problems in AngularJS, especially what are the issues of AngularJS is actually one of the issue. So issues with AngularJS, what are the issues with AngularJS is, so AngularJS, it is not designed for what you are using. AngularJS is not designed for what you are using. Actually, AngularJS is a framework built by Google for its internal use. And you started using that framework for your type of applications. Then usually lot of gaps will come. That means I will tell you a simple point actually. So lot of gaps will come. I will tell you a simple point. Actually, a client comes to us and asks to build an application for his requirements. Then how you will choose which technology to use to build an application, whether to use Java, whether to use .NET, whether to use PHP, like that. So a client comes to us and asks us to build an application for his business requirements. In which technology I have to build that? So what I have to use to build that application, how we decide it actually. For that, generally, we prepare a table. For that. So that table contains information like as is, and to be, and gap. This is the table that we generally first prepare. As is, to be, and gap. What is as is? What is to be? And what is gap? Actually, as is nothing but, as is means what your technology is capable of. That is as is. That means what your technology is capable of. That is as is. That means what Java is capable of, what .NET is capable of, what PHP is capable of. That is as is. To be means what client wants. wants. So that means what client wants. That means client business is this and he wants all this. Now what we have to do is we have to check the compatibilities. That means is your technology providing everything that client is asking for? Is your technology providing everything what client is asking for? Obviously 100 to 100% no technology in the world can provide complete solution for client problems. 100%. No technology in the world can do that. Doesn't have the ability for that. That means any technology across the world is not capable of handling all the issues 100%. Not possible. Not possible. That means the point here is then some gaps will be there. That means this is what actually we call gaps. Gaps means, so then how much it can handle, how many gaps are there, how much gap is there, that is the point here. That means your technology is capable of doing, then how much gap is there, how much gap, what it cannot do is gap. So for example, so Java.NET PHP, suppose Java is having 30% gaps, is having 30% gaps. .NET is having some 20% gaps. PHP is having 10% gaps. That means here the point is how you will fill up the gaps. So how to fill up the gaps. So that means gaps are there. That means Java is 10%, Java is 10%, .NET is 5%, gaps are there. That means suppose so Java has 10% gap and .NET is having 5% gaps and PHP is having 2% gaps. That means how much percentage? So that is important. How much percentage is important? So now obviously our company will choose the technology which has less percent of gaps. That means we will go with this PHP. So because it is having less gaps, it can fulfill all of them, only 2% it cannot fulfill. Then how to fill the gaps? You have to fill the gaps by using a third-party implementation. You need to borrow from third party. I think you know, for example, you have Java or .NET or PHP. You are developing an application for online ticket booking. Okay. After booking the ticket, a QR code should be generated for that ticket. Now, does your Java or .NET PHP having that QR code library? What do you say? Is it having that QR code library? Your technologies, in your technologies, do you have that? Right? Like QR code, barcodes, all these type of things. So obviously directly we don't have. We need to depend on third parties. So we need to implement from the third parties. So many third party solutions will be there. For example, I will show you here. So many third party solutions are there. Suppose we have Telerik. You might have heard about Telerik. Telerik is a third party. You have to purchase, your company purchases it. They will provide library. And you can see, you can observe here, Telerik, you can see, these people are customers of Telerik. NASA is customer of Telerik. Microsoft is customer of Telerik. World Bank Group is customer of Telerik. Volvo, Samsung are customers of Telerik. NASA is customer of Telerik. That means they are providing software support for NASA. You may be wondered why Microsoft is a customer of Telerik. That means Microsoft itself is a software development company, right? So it's a production company. And the point is why Microsoft because the library required for Microsoft technologies, So are provided by this Telerik. That means the gaps are filled by these people. They have solution for several technologies. Suppose you see demos. When I go to the demos, you can see they will provide for jQuery, AngularJS, React, Vue. They will provide for ASP.NET. They will provide for PHP. They will provide for Silverlight. They will provide for various other technologies. For even your JSP, PHP. You can see Telerik for JSP, Telerik for ASP, Telerik for Core, Telerik for so many. You have to buy them. It's not free. You have to buy. You can see you have to buy this. You have to buy, download this library. They will provide a support for this. Every technology is not 100% in building everything what client needs actually. Then we depend on these gaps. So AngularJS was not designed for our requirements actually. Then obviously lot of gaps will be there. So because AngularJS built by Google but for its internal use, and we are using that framework for our application, a lot of issues will be there. And AngularJS uses a legacy library. It is not a modular library. Legacy library means entire library is loaded even to handle a small operation. That means only that operation specific library is not loaded. Entire library is loaded. That is legacy library. So legacy library, it always slow in rendering. And another important is AngularJS is JavaScript based. JavaScript based means a lot of issues are there. With the JavaScript based environment. JavaScript based environment, lot of issues are there with JavaScript based environment. JavaScript based environment means you know that JavaScript is not strongly typed. It is not implicitly strictly typed. JavaScript has schema issues. JavaScript has compatibility issues. These are all the problems with AngularJS. These are the issues with AngularJS. That is the reason why Google Angular team so thought about designing a new platform for developers, and they named it as Angular. AngularJS is up to the version, it is the version 1x. So the latest version of AngularJS is 1.8.0. And from 2 onwards, they call it as Angular. Now, what is difference between these two? What is Angular and what is AngularJS? Then what is AngularJS you understood. Now, what is Angular? What is difference between these two? Why Angular and why AngularJS? These are the points. What are the features of Angular? What is Angular? These we need to understand. That we will discuss in tomorrow's session. Hope you are clear with this topic. And tomorrow we will continue with this. And tomorrow you are going to get a complete clarity on what is Angular and how Angular is going to work. What are the features of Angular? And we will discuss the difference with Angular and other technologies that we have like React, Angular. What is difference between them? Just an overview of understanding with other technologies. Then we can start working with the core concepts of Angular, right? So tomorrow we will get a clarity on what is Angular and its features, right? And tomorrow all these topics I will upload into one online repository, whatever topics we discussed from the last 2 sessions. And I will give you that link so that you can download these notes and everything related to that. Once the registration process is completed, I will create a private repository for the registered people, and I will share the step-by-step notes and documentation, everything related to everyday concept what we are discussing, so that will not be any issue. It will take maximum of 3 months, right? 75 sessions. Within 3 months, we will finish all these concepts, right? It will take 3 months. Yeah, our admin will send you those details, right? Just demos are going on, right? So in 1-2 days, we will finish our demos and our admin will be in contact with you. So he will send you the fee structure details and all other information to you. Course contents and all, right? No, not having any React sessions yet. Yes, Udesh, any doubt? Sekar, Udesh, any doubts?
No, sir. Thank you.
Yes, fine. Yes, Shekhar.
Yeah, I'm new to this Angular. Actually, I just completed Windows applications only in .NET.
Acha.
Yeah, can I proceed with your Angular?
Yeah, you have basic idea of HTML, JavaScript.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, that's enough, right? You can continue, no issue. That is enough, right?
Yeah, I just started today only. Can you
It's no problem. Just demos are going on, right?
Oh,
Just demos are going on. Once we start the actual process, everything we will learn from the basic level. So no need to worry about that.
okay, thank you.
Right. Yes, Venkat, Bharat. Yeah, both are different. Angular JS and Angular, both are different. Yes, Bharat Kumar, any doubts?
Hello. Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
So I have a one doubt, sir. Actually, while developing the Angular application, we can go for HTML forms as well as React forms also. So will you give training on React forms as well?
Of course, they are part of Angular concept, na? Reactive forms,
Yes.
all these are part of Angular. That is general concept involved in Angular, right? Those are general
Yes.
topics in
And in
Angular.
the Angular,
Hmm.
okay, that's fine, sir. And coming to the UI part also, so
Hmm.
we use the empty bootstrap styles. Empty bootstrap styles.
We will
Will you
use
teach
everything.
more?
I will show you Angular materials. We will use Angular material, right? Material means MD only, right?
Okay.
No. That is called
Yes.
Angular material.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Hmm.
And will you use something more about MongoDB and Node.js as well?
I told you in the last session that I'm not going to teach you MongoDB and Node.js, but I will show you a integration with MongoDB, one example completely. This is not full stack course, right? This is Angular, right? But I will show you integration with server side technology. Means I will give you an example which you can even practice with MongoDB and Node.js. We are not
Okay.
teaching MongoDB and AngularJS and MongoDB and Node.js in this session, but we will learn integration towards the end. Okay.
Okay. And one more thing, may I know which technology you use it to give showing the examples? Like we are using Angular now. So similarly, for showing the examples, you are using the .NET or Java, PHP like that, which we can see
Why?
when
That's
using.
what
We can say.
you asked MongoDB and Node.js. For which purpose you asked them? For which purpose
The
MongoDB
same
and
thing, same
this
thing.
you asked?
Server side.
Then again, the same question you repeated, no?
Yes,
With which
yes,
technology integration? So Angular should be learned as a neutral person, right? If you learn Angular as .NET, Angular as PHP, Angular as Java, that is not great. Understood?
Yes.
That means you should learn Angular in such a way that you will fit into any kind of backend technology you are dealing with. Understood?
Yes, got it.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Anisha, have any doubt? Yes, we will learn TypeScript here, right? After learning TypeScript only, we will learn Angular. Yes, it will suit for your Java experience. You can host in IIS also. Yes, Pratik.
When will admin will share fee structure with us? When admin will share fee structure with us?
By the time we finish the demos.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Let's continue in tomorrow's session. Okay. Thank you very much.